Let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, or whenever you might be watching. Welcome to my neighborhood. Or maybe less my neighborhood, more my basement. But anyway, welcome. I am so glad that you are here. How many of you out there are old enough to catch that Mr. Rogers reference? Yes, indeed. Absolutely loved Mr. Rogers. Loved that whole show. He just had a way, if you haven't experienced that, he just had a way of making you feel like everything was going to be okay. I watched him when I was growing up, and I got so excited when I would hear that theme song. Just something very comforting, even when he'd come in and put on, so I put on the sweater and put on the shoes and the whole shot. Mr. Rogers, just a great guy. So welcome to Throwback Saturday. This is what I'm taping it is on Saturday. I'm coming to you from my basement, and so kind of a cross section, right, between Mr. Rogers and Wayne's World. No, just kidding. Anyway, trying to lean towards the Mr. Rogers feel and scenario. That's what this was all about, and coming to you from my grandma's rocker with the gooseneck handles that I have such fond memories and feelings. It's nice, isn't it, sometimes to revisit those things in our past or in our childhood that made us feel good, to feel welcome, to feel accepted, to feel like everything is just going to be okay. And just good to revisit that. So welcome. I am so glad that you're here. Why the Mr. Rogers deal, theme, scenario? Well, I'm going to let you know. Mr. Rogers was one of those people who, in my estimation, knew how really to love. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Just a piece of it, but that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be in John today, so I'm going to go right to the scriptures. We're in John 15. And the whole chapter of John 15, I'm going to encourage you to read that. We won't read that together today, but I'm going to encourage you to read that. The whole thing is in red, which means that was Jesus' words directly. The verse that we're going to focus on today, however, is the verse is 13. So chapter 15, verse 13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first read this, it was a little bit intimidating to me. I didn't understand for a long time what this really meant, and I was thinking that would mean virtual death, and it was hard for me to imagine, and my friends out there watching, please don't be offended, but it was hard for me to imagine that I would sacrifice my actual life for a friend. You know, family maybe, family for sure, but just a friend, until I began to realize that laying down one's life doesn't necessarily have to mean actual death. It can mean many things. So we're going to talk about that for a minute, and then I'm going to give you a couple of really good real-time examples of what that might look like. So Mr. Rogers was a great example of love in action, of boots on the ground love. And I'm sure he was brilliant. If you've studied him at all, there was a great article in People magazine a couple months ago about him, but he was brilliant. I'm sure he could have done anything, absolutely anything for a living, but he chose to do this child show that would just convey love and acceptance to kids and help them feel like everything was going to be okay, and have that educational piece in there as well. So he was really a great man, but he did have his struggles when he was young, and I do believe a lot of times that our ability to be compassionate is grown out of our hardship and struggle. And, you know, he was sickly, and so he knew what it was to struggle, and I think he then put that compassion into play. And he was also one of the first people, especially on TV and especially in that time period, to cross racial barriers and such. So this was pretty groundbreaking and pretty amazing. But this, again, boots on the ground, love in action, and that's why I've started this whole session today with the Mr. Rogers theme song, and having a little bit of fun with that. So back to the scripture and what it is to lay down one's life for one's friends. This is the way that I see it. It doesn't have to be, again, actual death. It can be The if you have plans, or we all have our plans, we all have things in mind that we're going to do, or goals for our career, or just goals for our life. And if at any point we deviate from that to help care for, or to just help a friend or relative, if we scrap our own plans so that we can be there for them and come beside them in whatever manner that is, that's laying down your life for a friend. So again, it doesn't have to mean actual death, but if you've changed your plans, if you've put aside your agenda, if you've put aside your plans, that's laying down your life for a friend. So the good news is it can be done in that manner. It doesn't necessarily have to mean actual death. So yay! I do have a couple of really wonderful real-time examples of that. The first one comes from church, and we were having our VBS wrap up here recently, and all the kids and the helpers were up on stage, and it was all fun and exciting. They were going to do some music, and there's this precious little girl, her name is Sophie, and she was on stage with the rest of them. And Sophie has been diagnosed, and I have her mother's permission to share this, has been diagnosed. She's somewhere on the autism spectrum. So noise bothers her, but you know what? She was up there, she had her little noise canceling headphones on, and she's just enjoying the whole atmosphere, and she's just in it. So she was doing their thing. And then there was another little girl, Haley, and let me tell you what, she wasn't having it. This was a whole situation for her. So her dad was in the front row, and Haley was kind of coming up, and then she'd go down, and then she'd go back up on stage, and she would just cry. She was just in distress. That is a horrible feeling, isn't it? To know there's some place that you should be, and that you kind of want to be, but you're intimidated, you're afraid of it. I know we have all been there, and this little girl was there. Well, all that to say, Haley finally went up, kind of stood off to the side, but she was visibly distressed. And, Sophie looked over once and saw that her friend was in distress. And immediately, she didn't even have to think twice, broke away from the pack, came over to love on Haley and just hug her and pat her face and whatever it took to make her feel better about life. And, then Sophie was enjoying her experience there, but she removed herself from the situation, from something that she was enjoying, to tend to her friend. That, guys, is laying down your life, your plans, maybe something you are enjoying, to tend to the needs of a friend. I'm here to tell you, you can't teach that kind of compassion. I do believe maybe part of that comes from the fact that, well, she's naturally compassionate, but that she's had struggles, so she knows what it is to struggle, and she knows what it is to feel uncomfortable. So she would have done just about anything to make this other little girl feel comforted and feel better. I have one other quick example of that, and a friend of mine named Julie, I was speaking with her recently, and we were just sharing some life stuff, and she shared with me that she had cared for her mother when she was in a facility. Her mom had dementia, possible Alzheimer's, and so Julie would go to see her and help take care of her. And anybody who's been in that situation or is in that situation, I'm sorry for you. My heart does cry for you. I never had to experience that with my parents, but have experienced it up close and personal when I was a PTA in a facility. And I was blessed to be able to love on these people when their families couldn't be around. But so Julie was experiencing this in real time, so she'd go take care of her mom. And if you have had any experience with this, you'll know that they can be very difficult to care for. They don't necessarily see the point or the sense in even eating, or in the therapy world, what we call ADLs, activities of daily living. They just don't see the point in it. So they can be very hard to instruct. And Julie knew this. And so when it would come time for bathing or shower time, it was just difficult to be able to tell mom what she should do, why she should do it, and how she should do it. So the deal is, Julie decided just to, when shower time came, she would just take off her clothes, get right in the shower with her mom. And that way, they were in this together. They were doing this together. She could demonstrate, she could talk, she could show, but most of all, they were doing that she was in it to win it, instead of just standing off from a distance saying, this is what you need to do. So Julie laid aside her plans. What a vulnerable situation to be in, and what a heart-wrenching situation to be in. It's such role reversal for, for these parents who used to take care of us, and we're now taking care of them and instructing them on how they need to take care of themselves. So your heart's breaking, but you're again in it with them, boots on the ground. And I'm telling you what, friends, that is compassion. That is laying down your life, laying down those feelings, laying down those emotions, so that you can get done what needs to be done for these people who probably at this point don't even know our names. They may think we are an aid. They may think we're just good friends, or maybe even not good friends. They were able to have a couple laughs through the whole thing, so I think that's wonderful. That some joy, Jesus is so good, isn't he, that some joy could be infused, and Julie's mom was able to laugh through it. But these are examples of, or what I want to give you as examples of, laying down your life for one's friends. That's compassion, and this is how Jesus says it should be. No greater love has this. No greater love than this. So that's what I want to talk to you about today, friends, and I hope you enjoyed my little Mr. Rogers reference and had some fun with that today. Yes, I know I can't sing it, especially when I don't have any music, but that's okay. You endured it, and I'm so happy that you did. So thanks for joining me today. Please take my suggestion and go back and read all of John 15. Read that whole chapter, because it's just chock full of good stuff. I'm sure we will revisit this and go over some other things in this chapter. Nothing like it when Jesus gives us direct, I don't want to say commands, but tells us exactly what the stuff is to look like and exactly how we're to love. So again, thank you. Hope you do have a beautiful day in the neighborhood, wherever that might be. And until next time, God bless.